What happens when two of the most outspoken voices in media collide in an interview that nobody saw coming? Tonight, we dive into the explosive confrontation that left audiences stunned and changed the trajectory of late-night television forever. This is the story of how a routine guest appearance turned into a verbal battleground that ended with security being called and a guest being escorted off set. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below about which celebrity interview you think went too far, because what you're about to hear will shock you. The studio lights dimmed as Jon Stewart adjusted his tie, glancing at his notes one final time. Across from him sat Meghan Markle, poised and elegant in a navy blue blazer, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The familiar Daily Show set buzzed with the usual pre-in energy. Cameras positioned at perfect angles, the audience settling into their seats with anticipation. "Welcome back to The Daily Show. I'm Jon Stewart," he began with his trademark smirk. "And tonight we're joined by Meghan Markle, former actress, former royal, and current podcast host." "Meghan, thanks for being here." "Thank you for having me, Jon," Meghan replied, her voice carrying that polished cadence that had become her signature. "I've been looking forward to this conversation." "I bet you have," Stewart said, leaning back in his chair. "So, let's dive right in. You've been quite vocal lately about media representation, particularly around issues of race and privilege, but I have to ask, and forgive me if this sounds direct, isn't there something a bit ironic about someone who married into one of the world's most privileged institutions lecturing others about systemic inequality?" The smile on Meghan's face flickered for just a moment. "I think that's an unfair characterization, Jon. My experiences within that institution actually gave me unique insight into how these systems operate, even at the highest levels of society." "Unique insight," Stewart repeated, his eyebrows raised. "Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I sit, it looks more like someone who won the ultimate privilege lottery complaining about the house rules after cashing in the ticket." "That's incredibly reductive," Meghan shot back, her composure beginning to crack. "You're dismissing the very real discrimination and harassment I faced, both from the media and from within the institution itself." Stewart leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "I'm not dismissing your experiences, Meghan, but let's be honest here. You knew exactly what you were signing up for when you married into the royal family. The scrutiny, the protocol, the expectations, and when it didn't work out the way you wanted, you walked away with a multi-million-dollar Netflix deal and a platform bigger than most heads of state. That's not exactly a victim story, is it? You clearly don't understand what actually happened," Meghan replied, her voice rising slightly. "The level of racist coverage, the complete lack of support from the institution, the impact on my mental health. These aren't just inconveniences, Jon. They're serious issues that affect real people." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Stewart said, his tone becoming more pointed. "What I understand is that you had access to resources that 99.9% of people dealing with mental health issues could never dream of. Private therapists, security details, multiple homes, financial security. And instead of using that platform to actually help people facing similar struggles without those advantages, you turned it into a personal brand." The audience had grown noticeably quieter, sensing the tension building between host and guest. Meghan shifted in her seat, her hands no longer folded peacefully. "That's completely unfair," she said, her voice now carrying a sharp edge. "Everything Harry and I have done since leaving has been focused on service and helping others. Our Quell Foundation, our various initiatives, they're all about giving back and creating positive change." Stewart laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Service. Meghan, you literally trademarked the word Arwell before you even left the royal family. You turned your personal trauma into intellectual property. That's not service. That's business. How dare you?" Meghan snapped, her polished facade finally cracking completely. "You sit here in your comfortable studio making jokes about other people's pain and you want to lecture me about service. What have you done lately besides mock people who are actually trying to make a difference?" The studio fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze, unsure whether they should keep rolling. Stewart's expression had gone from playful to deadly serious instant. "What have I done?" he repeated slowly. "Let's see. I spent 15 years using this platform to hold politicians accountable regardless of party. I fought for healthcare benefits for 9/11 first responders when everyone else had moved on. I used my privilege and platform to shine light on issues that actually matter, not to build a personal brand around my own grievances. That's rich coming from someone who walked away from The Daily Show when it suited him. Meghan fired back. At least I didn't abandon my responsibilities when things got difficult. Stewart's jaw tightened. I left to spend time with my family and work on projects I cared about. I didn't leave because the job was too hard or because people were mean to me in the press. And I certainly didn't spend years afterward doing interviews about how unfairly I was treated. You have no idea what you're talking about, Meghan, said her voice, now shaking with anger. The level of scrutiny I faced was unprecedented. The racist undertones in every story, the complete fabrication of facts, the coordinated harassment campaign. Unprecedented, Stewart interrupted. Meghan, you were a cable television actress who became a duchess. The scrutiny comes with the territory. You think Hillary Clinton didn't face unprecedented scrutiny. You think Barack Obama didn't deal with racist coverage. The difference is they understood that public service sometimes means taking hits for the greater good, not monetizing. Your complaints about it. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You invited me on your show under false pretenses, pretending this would be a respectful conversation about important issues. I invited. You ought to have an honest conversation, Stewart replied, remaining seated, but his voice growing louder. If you can't handle honest questions about your public statements and actions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Honest questions, Meghan laughed bitterly. This is a hit job, plain and simple. You've already made up your mind about me, and nothing I say will change that. Stewart finally stood, facing her across the desk. You're right, I've made up my mind. I've watched you turn personal struggles into a cottage industry. I've seen you use important issues like mental health and racism as props in your own narrative. And frankly, I think it's insulting to people who face these challenges without your resources or platform. The confrontation was escalating beyond anything the show had ever experienced, and both host and guests seemed to have forgotten they were on live television. You know what your real problem is, Jon, Meghan said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the studio. You can't stand that a woman, especially a woman of color, refused to stay silent when faced with institutional racism and abuse. You're threatened by someone who won't play by the rules that benefit people like you. Stewart's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare try to make this about race or gender. This is about accountability. This is about someone who had every advantage in the world and still managed to position themselves as a victim. And when called out on it, you immediately reached for the discrimination card because you can't defend your actions on their merits. My actions. Meghan's voice rose to a near shout. What actions? Speaking out about mistreatment, protecting my family, trying to use my platform for good. Which of those actions exactly do you find so offensive? How about the action of doing a globally televised interview where you accused your husband's family of racism without providing any specifics or context? Stewart shot back. How about the action of timing that interview to coincide with your grandfather-in-law being hospitalized? How about the action of making millions of dollars by airing private family disputes on international television? Meghan's face flushed red. Those conversations needed to happen. People deserve to know the truth about what goes on behind palace walls. And if you think concerns about my son's skin color aren't specific enough, then you're part of the problem. The problem, Stewart said, stepping around the desk toward her, is that you made incredibly serious accusations against specific people and then hid behind vague language when pressed for details. You want to talk about racism? Fine. Names give specifics, but you can't because you know that would expose you to actual scrutiny and potential legal action. I don't owe you or anyone else a detailed breakdown of private conversations, Meghan replied, backing away slightly, but maintaining her defiant stance. The fact that you're demanding I provide more ammunition for people to attack me with just proves my point about how women are treated when they speak truth to power. Stewart laughed harshly. Truth to power, Meghan. You were literally part of the power structure. You were a working royal with access to resources most people can't imagine. And when you didn't like how that power structure operated, instead of working to change it from within, you burned it down on your way out and then profited from the ashes. I tried to work within the system, Meghan protested. I was silenced at every turn. I wasn't allowed to defend myself against false stories. I wasn't given the support I needed when facing unprecedented harassment. What was I supposed to do? Just suffer in silence for the rest of my life? You were supposed to understand that. Being a public figure, especially a royal, means dealing with criticism and scrutiny, Stewart replied. You were supposed to focus on the work, not on managing your image. You think Queen Elizabeth spent her 70-year reign worrying about negative press coverage? Queen Elizabeth never faced the kind of coordinated harassment campaign that I did. Meghan said she never had to deal with the intersection of racism and sexism that defined my experience. You're comparing apples to oranges. I'm comparing someone who understood duty and service to someone who confused celebrity with royalty, Stewart said bluntly. The Queen understood that the institution was bigger than her personal feelings. You seem to think the institution should adapt to serve your personal brand. The audience was completely silent now, some people visibly uncomfortable with the intensity of the exchange. A few audience members had actually gotten up and left, unable to watch the confrontation. Continue. My personal brand. Meghan's voice cracked with emotion. Is that what you think this is about? I was suicidal, Jon. I was in such a dark place that I contemplated ending my life. And the institution that was supposed to protect me, that was supposed to care about my well-being, did nothing. They cared more about protecting their image than protecting me. Stewart's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm, and I'm genuinely sorry you went through that. Mental health struggles are serious, and no one should have to face them alone. But Meghan, you weren't alone. You had a husband who loved you. You had financial resources. You had access to the best mental health care in the world. Most people dealing with suicidal thoughts don't have those advantages. Instead of using your experience to highlight how broken mental health support systems are for regular people, you made it about how the palace failed you personally. How is that not highlighting broken systems? Meghan demanded. If someone with my resources and platform couldn't get help, what does that say about how these institutions treat everyone else? It says that you didn't actually try to get help through proper channels, Stewart replied. It says that you expected special treatment, and when you didn't get it, you decided the whole system was corrupt. Did you go to your family doctor? Did you research therapists? Did you use any of the standard resources available to people in crisis? Or did you just expect someone to read your mind and solve your problems for you? Meghan stared at him in disbelief. You're seriously questioning whether I tried hard enough to get mental health treatment? You're actually blaming me for not navigating bureaucracy correctly while I was in crisis. I'm questioning whether you took responsibility for your own mental health or whether you expected other people to manage it for you. Stewart said, there's a difference between needing support and expecting others to anticipate your needs. Without communication, this is unbelievable. Meghan said, shaking her head. You're literally victim blaming someone for not handling their mental health crisis in the way you think is appropriate. Do you hear yourself right now? I hear someone who's used to having their feelings treated as facts, Stewart replied. I hear someone who's confused sympathy with agreement. Yes, you went through difficult experiences. Yes, you deserved support. But that doesn't mean every decision you made in response to those experiences was justified or helpful. What decisions? Meghan shouted. The decision to prioritize my mental health. The decision to protect my family. The decision to tell my story instead of letting others control the narrative. The decision to turn your personal struggles into public spectacle. Stewart shot back. The decision to make millions of dollars off your trauma while claiming it's about service. The decision to damage relationships with people who can't defend themselves publicly because they're bound by protocol you chose to abandon. Meghan's hands were shaken now. Whether from anger or emotion, it was impossible to tell. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what it's like to have every aspect of your life scrutinized, every word twisted, every action misinterpreted. Actually, I do know what that's like, Stewart said quietly. I've been in the public eye for decades. I've been criticized, mocked, and attacked. The difference is I never expected sympathy for choosing a career that comes with public scrutiny. I never demanded that people treat my personal struggles as public policy issues. The difference is you've never faced racism, Meghan replied. You've never had to deal with the additional layer of discrimination that comes with being a woman of color in the spotlight. Your struggles, and mine, are not comparable. Stewart nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. I haven't faced racism, and I won't pretend to understand that experience. But I have watched other public figures face racism with dignity and grace, using their platforms to create actual change rather than just talking about their own victimization. I've seen people turn their pain into purpose without monetizing their trauma. Like who? Meghan challenged. Give me examples of people who've handled it better than I have. Like John Lewis, who faced actual violence for his activism and never once made it about his personal brand. Like Maya Angelou, who turned her trauma into art that helped millions of people. Like Barack Obama, who faced unprecedented racist attacks during his presidency and never once suggested that people owed him special consideration because of it. The mention of those names hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her face went pale, then flushed deep red as she processed what Stewart had just said. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible at first. "How dare you compare my situation to people who are no longer here to defend themselves? You're using dead civil rights leaders to score points against me in an argument. That's disgusting." Stewart's expression didn't change. "I'm using examples of people who understood that real change requires sacrifice, not self-promotion. People who put the cause before their personal comfort. People who understood that leadership means taking criticism without constantly playing the victim card. The victim card." Meghan's voice exploded back to full volume. "I'm not playing anything. I'm a victim of a coordinated harassment campaign that drove me to consider suicide. I'm a victim of institutional racism that affected not just me, but potentially my children. Those aren't cards, John. Those are facts. Facts require evidence," Stewart replied coldly. "What you've provided are feelings, interpretations, and accusations without specifics. You want to be taken seriously as an advocate for change, then advocate. Don't just complain about how unfairly you've been treated." Meghan took a step closer to Stewart, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You want specifics? Fine. How about the fact that palace staff leaked negative stories about me to the press while refusing to correct false ones? How about the fact that I was told my son might not receive a title because of concerns about his appearance? How about the fact that I was denied security protection after receiving death threats? Are those specific enough for you?" "Those are allegations," Stewart said, not backing down despite her proximity. "And even if they're true, they still don't justify turning your personal grievances into a media empire. Could have addressed those issues privately, through proper channels, or through legal action. Instead, you chose the most public, most damaging, most profitable route possible. Proper channels." Meghan laughed bitterly. "The same proper channels that failed to protect me in the first place. The same proper channels that prioritized protecting the institution over protecting me. You're living in a fantasy world if you think those channels would have worked. So instead, you decided to declare war on your husband's family on international television." Stewart said, "You decided that if you couldn't get what you wanted privately, you'd force the issue publicly. That's not whistleblowing, Meghan. That's extortion." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Meghan stared at Stewart in complete shock, her mouth opening and closing without sound. When she finally found her voice, it was shaking with rage. "Extortion. Did you just accuse me of extorting the royal family on live television?" Stewart nodded grimly. "I'm saying that. Threatening to go public with damaging allegations unless you get what you want is textbook extortion. And when you didn't get what you wanted, you followed through on the threat. The fact that you wrapped it in language about truth-telling and advocacy doesn't change what it actually was." "I never threatened anyone," Meghan protested. But her voice lacked conviction. "I never said I would do an interview if they didn't meet my demands." "You didn't have to say it explicitly," Stewart replied. "Everyone involved knew exactly what would happen if you weren't kept happy. The interview with Oprah wasn't a spontaneous decision to share your truth. It was the inevitable result of a calculated pressure campaign that started the moment you realized being a working royal wasn't going to be the fairy tale you expected." Meghan's composure finally shattered completely. "You're twisting everything," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You're making me sound like some kind of manipulative monster when all I did was try to survive in an impossible situation. I never wanted any of this. I never wanted the scrutiny, the protocol, the restrictions. I just wanted to be happy with my husband and use whatever platform I had to help people. Then you should have stayed in Canada, Stewart said bluntly. You should have married Harry quietly and lived a private life focused on the causes you cared about. But that's not what you wanted, is it? You wanted the title, the status, the global platform, the designer clothes, the royal tours. You wanted all the benefits of being a working royal without any of the obligations that come with it. That's not true, Meghan sobbed, tears now streaming down her face. I gave up everything for that family. I gave up my career, my friends, my independence. I tried to serve. I tried to follow their rules. I tried to make it work. But nothing I did, it was ever good enough. You gave up a cable television show and some Hollywood acquaintances, Stewart said, his voice softening slightly at her tears, but remaining firm. In exchange, you got a global platform, unlimited resources, and the chance to impact millions of lives. Most people would consider that a pretty good trade. Most people don't have to live in a fishbowl, Meghan replied, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Most people don't have every decision scrutinized, every outfit analyzed, every expression photographed and interpreted. Most people get to make mistakes without having them broadcast to the entire world. Most people also don't get to live in palaces and have their charitable work funded by taxpayers, Stewart pointed out. Most people don't get private jets and security details and teams of staff to manage their lives. With great privilege comes great scrutiny. That's not unfair. That's just reality. Meghan looked around the studio as if seeing it for the first time, suddenly aware that this entire conversation had been broadcast to millions of people. Her face went white as the full implications hit her. This whole thing was a setup, she said slowly. You never intended to have a fair conversation. You brought me here to humiliate me on live television. You used my willingness to discuss important issues as a trap to attack me personally. Stewart shook his head. I brought you here to ask the questions that other interviewers won't ask because they're too concerned about maintaining access or avoiding controversy. I brought you here because I thought you might actually engage with legitimate criticism instead of deflecting to claims of victimization. Legitimate criticism. Meghan's voice rose again. You've spent the last 30 minutes attacking everything about me personally. You've questioned my mental health struggles, accused me of extortion, and suggested I'm not really committed to the causes I support. How is any of that legitimate? Because it's all based on your own public statements and actions. Stewart replied, I haven't made anything up or taken anything out of context. I've simply pointed out the contradictions between what you say and what you do, between the image you project and the reality of your choices. Meghan stood silently for a long moment, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to regain her composure. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but filled with venom. You know what, Jon? You're right about one thing. I did expect better from this experience. I expected to be treated with basic human decency and respect. I expected to have a conversation about important issues without being personally attacked, but clearly that was naive of me. Clearly, you're more interested in scoring points and getting viral moments than in actually discussing the topics I came here to address. The topics you came here to address are all about you, Stewart said simply. Your experiences, your struggles, your perspective, your projects. When was the last time you did an interview that wasn't ultimately about Meghan Markle? When was the last time you did a show that wasn't ultimately about Jon Stewart? Meghan shot back. At least I'm trying to use my platform to help other people instead of just making jokes about politicians and current events. I spent 15 years holding powerful people accountable for their actions, Stewart replied. I used humor as a tool to make important points about serious issues. I never claimed to be a victim or demanded special treatment because of my personal struggles. No, you just demanded special treatment because of your comedy credentials. Meghan said, you think being funny gives you the right to tear people down without consequences. Well, congratulations, Jon. You've successfully torn me down on live television. I hope it was worth it. She turned to walk off the set, but Stewart called after her. Meghan, wait. She paused, but didn't turn around. What? I genuinely hope you find a way to use your platform more effectively, he said. I hope you find a way to turn your experiences into something that actually helps other people instead of just generating sympathy for yourself. You have resources and opportunities that most people can only dream of. Don't waste them on self-pity." Meghan turned back to face him, her eyes blazing with fury. "And I genuinely hope you find a way to be a better person," she said. "I hope you learn that tearing other people down doesn't make you look stronger or smarter. It just makes you look cruel." With that, she walked off the set, leaving Stewart standing alone behind his desk as the cameras continued to roll. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply leave. Stewart looked directly into the camera, his expression serious. "We'll be right back after this commercial break," he said quietly, though everyone in the studio knew that no one would be coming back. And that's how one of the most explosive interviews in television history came to an end. With a former actress turned duchess storming off the set of The Daily Show, leaving behind a trail of accusations, hurt feelings, and a studio full of people who had just witnessed something they would never forget. The confrontation that started as a routine celebrity interview had devolved into a personal attack that crossed every line of professional courtesy and left both participants looking damaged. So, what do you think? Was Jon Stewart right to challenge Meghan Markle so aggressively? Or did he cross the line from tough journalism into personal attack? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the moments when interviews go completely off the rails.